What's up, guys? This is Chris from DraftDashboard.com.
Here are my DFS picks for NFL Week 17. Sleeper picks.
These picks apply for DraftKings and FanDuel. Before I get started, please drop a like on this video and hit that red subscribe button
And hit that bell icon.
so you don't miss our new videos.
In this video, I'm going to give you some of my top DFS sleeper picks, super low priced and low ownership players that could crush value this week and give your lineup an advantage over the field. These are risky plays, meant for large tournaments only. Don't go all in on any of these guys. They are high risk, high reward picks. And if you stick around to the very end of this video, we'll use the Draft Dashboard tools to make a DFS lineup using the picks we just made. Okay guys, NFL Week 17. Let's take a look at the quarterback position. So my sleeper pick at the quarterback position, I got a few of them for you here. So I like Tom Brady from the Tampa Bay Bucks playing the Carolina Panthers. He's only going to be about 4% owned. He's 6,100 DraftKings salary, 1,100 more on FanDuel, fighting for his playoff life. Will he put a game together and throw 3 touchdowns for 300 plus yards? I think he can get there. So I like Tom Brady as a sleeper pick here versus the Carolina Panthers. Another sleeper pick that I like. Now, this one's probably not going to be as popular as Tom Brady, but he has a better matchup and a better game script. So another sleeper pick at the quarterback position, super low ownership. So this is a deep sleeper pick. Take a look at Russell Wilson from the Denver Broncos playing the Kansas City Chiefs, who have the 8th worst defense overall, give up the 3rd most fantasy points to opposing quarterbacks. Russell Wilson has averaged 14.8 fantasy points per game on the season. He gets an average of 3.3 rush attempts per game. He's only going to be about 1% owned, projected at 15.5 fantasy points here in Week 17. He's 5,400 DraftKings salary, 1,500 more on FanDuel. Vegas thinks there's going to be 45 points scored in this game, with the Broncos trailing by 12.5. So I like this game script for Russell Wilson. Oftentimes, when quarterbacks play guys like Patrick Mahomes or Tom Brady, they bring their A game, and I expect Russell Wilson to bring his A game this week versus Patrick Mahomes. And Russell Wilson has scored 11 and 27 fantasy points in his last 2 games. He got 2 and 4 rush attempts in those games. So Russell Wilson has not been good this season. Hard to play him, but he will be a deep sleeper pick with a good matchup in a decent scoring game here. Behind a couple touchdowns, he'll be throwing the ball quite a bit. So I think he can get it done here. I think he can hit value. So I like Russell Wilson as a sleeper pick here versus the Kansas City Chiefs. Now, if you're looking for a super cheap quarterback, take a look at, where is he? There he is. David Blau from the Arizona Cardinals playing the Atlanta Falcons, who have the 5th worst defense overall. They give up the 9th most fantasy points to opposing quarterbacks. This will be David Blau's first start this season. He's going to be about 2% owned, projected at 12.1 fantasy points this week. But what I like about this pick, he's only 4,000 DraftKings salary. So even if David Blau only scores 12.1 fantasy points at 4,000 DraftKings salary, that would be 6 times value. So he's got a pretty good chance here to crush value on this slate. If he can score 15 plus fantasy points, he's going to crush it at only 4,000 DraftKings salary. He's 2,000 more on FanDuel. Vegas thinks there's going to be 40.5 points scored in this game, with the Cardinals trailing by 6. Now, unfortunately for David Blau, he will not have his number one pass target in DeAndre Hopkins, but he does have plenty of capable wide receivers and a pretty decent tight end as well. So I think he can get it done here. I'm looking at this guy as a pretty awesome sleeper pick because he's only 4,000 DraftKings salary. Now I do expect this ownership to come up a little bit as people kind of figure out that his salary is so low and he doesn't need much to hit value, and he's got a good chance at breaking the slate. If this guy goes out and throws 250 yards and 2 touchdowns, gets you over 15 fantasy points, what a value play he'll be. So I like David Blau as a sleeper pick here versus the Atlanta Falcons.
Before I continue with the picks, I'm excited today because we added a new contest for everyone watching.
If you want to enter the drawing for $25 PayPal,
all you need to do is like this video, hit that subscribe button, and make a quick comment below to be entered into the drawing. We'll reply to a random comment and let you know that you won.
And we'll send you $25 PayPal.
So it's that easy, and we pick a new winner every Saturday and announce them in our video. So get your comment in now so I can add another entry for you.
Okay, let's take a look at the running back position. So my sleeper pick at the running back position, and I was surprised to see the ownership so low on this play. His salary is still pretty low, and he's still getting a lot of rush attempts and pass targets and fantasy production. He's got a pretty good matchup as well. So one of my sleeper picks at the running back position is A.J. Dillon from the Green Bay Packers, playing the Minnesota Vikings, who have the second worst defense overall, give up the 11th most fantasy points to opposing running backs. A.J. Dillon has averaged 10.3 fantasy points per game on the season, getting an average of 11 rush attempts per game, 2.6 pass targets per game. So he's only going to be about 4% owned. He's projected at 12.2 fantasy points here this week. He's 5,800 DraftKings salary, 1,400 more on FanDuel. Vegas thinks there's going to be 48 points scored in this game, with the Packers favored by 3. So A.J. Dillon has scored 13, 22, and 21 fantasy points in the last 3 games. He got 11, 11, and 18 rush attempts in those games, and he got 3 pass targets in each of those games. So 14 touches the last 2 weeks, 21 touches the week before that. His salary has been creeping up here, and I think that's why his ownership is low. If he was like 5,200 DraftKings salary, I think his ownership would be closer to 10%. But at 5,800 DraftKings salary, now you're talking, close to the price of a guy like Cam Akers or Travis Etienne even. So I can see it. I can see why his ownership is going to be low because of his price tag. But I do think he's still got a pretty good chance to hit value here. He's getting plenty of touches, gets goal line carries. So I like A.J. Dillon as a sleeper pick here versus the Minnesota Vikings. So another sleeper pick you could consider on volume alone. He doesn't have a good matchup. His price tag is okay here. Take a look at Deonta Foreman from the Carolina Panthers, playing the Tampa Bay Bucks, who have a middle-of-the-pack defense overall. Now, they've been good versus opposing running backs, so not a good matchup. But Deonta Foreman scored 26 fantasy points last week off of 21 rush attempts. So he's only going to be about 2% owned. He's 5,700 DraftKings salary, 800 more on FanDuel. Vegas thinks there's going to be 40.5 points scored in this game, with the Panthers trailing by 3.5. So I think he's worth a look here with those 21 touches and 26 fantasy points last week. Now the matchup isn't good, but the Tampa Bay Bucks haven't really been great this season. So it wouldn't surprise me if the Carolina Panthers move the ball and keep this game close. Vegas has it within a field goal pretty much here, so they're expecting a close game. So if D'Onta Foreman can get 20 plus rush attempts in this one, I think he's got a good chance at hitting value. So I like D'Onta Foreman as a sleeper pick here versus the Tampa Bay Bucks. Now on the other side of the ball, you could consider Isaiah Pacheco from the Kansas City Chiefs playing the Denver Broncos, who have a good defense overall. They're middle of the pack defending opposing running backs. Isaiah Pacheco has scored 10, 10, and 12 fantasy points in the last 3 games. He got 14, 15, and 13 rush attempts on top of 2, 1, and 3 pass targets. So over 16 touches in each of his games in the past 3 weeks. Pretty decent volume. Hasn't put up eye-popping fantasy numbers yet, but I have a feeling that game is going to come soon. I think it's going to come this week. He's only going to be about 5% owned. He's $5,600 DraftKings salary, $700 more on FanDuel, and Vegas thinks there's going to be 45 points scored in this game, with the Kansas City Chiefs favored by 12.5. Oh, sorry, he's from the Kansas City Chiefs. I don't know why I said on the other side of the ball when I said Isaiah Pacheco. He's not a Tampa Bay Buccaneer. So Isaiah Pacheco, I think he's an explosive running back. I do think he has 20 plus fantasy point upside, and I like his price tag. There's a lot of running backs in this $5,500 to $6,000 range that are low ownership, that are getting pretty decent volume. So lots of options for you guys here this week. So I like Isaiah Pacheco as a sleeper pick here versus the Denver Broncos.
Real quick, guys, I got great news. For a limited time, we're offering a full 30-day trial to Draft Dashboard. You can try all the tools for NFL. NBA is right around the corner. This is a great time to get in and try everything for 1 month. The tools are all about saving research time. You can see the last 3 games, the fantasy points per game, the targets they got per game, so you can see how involved they are in the offense, the rushes they got per game. Seeing all this stuff on one screen helps you save time and make better picks. Oh, and if you're tired of doing research every day, we just added a cheat sheet that shows hand-picked plays for the slate. No confusing stat lines, no headaches, just a simple cheat sheet that shows the absolute best players for your lineups.
Okay, moving on to the wide receiver position. I have a clear-cut winner as my sleeper pick at the wide receiver position. I like Greg Dortch from the Arizona Cardinals playing the Atlanta Falcons, who have the 5th worst defense overall, give up the 5th most fantasy points to opposing wide receivers. Greg Dortch, he scored 22 fantasy points last game in his return to the field off of 11 pass targets and 3 rush attempts. So he's only going to be about 4% owned. He's projected at 10.2 fantasy points here this week. But what I like about this pick, Greg Dortch is only $3,000 DraftKings salary. Almost looks like that was a pricing mistake. He's $2,300 more on FanDuel. Vegas thinks there's going to be 40.5 points scored in this game, with the Cardinals trailing by 6. So Greg Dortch, coming off of a game that he scored 22 fantasy points, off of 11 pass targets and 3 rush attempts, with no DeAndre Hopkins. And if you go back and look at the season, Greg Dortch has played really well with DeAndre Hopkins off the field. So I don't know what else you could ask for in a sleeper pick here. Fantastic matchup. It's got a good game script as the Cardinals are expected to be trailing by a touchdown in this game. should have to throw the ball. Greg Dortch at only 3,000 DraftKings salary, coming off a game he scored 22 fantasy points with 11 targets and 3 rush attempts. I can't say that enough. I mean, I hope this guy doesn't go out there and put up a goose egg. He sure is going to make a lot of my lineups. So I like Greg Dortch here versus the Atlanta Falcons. Oh, and if you stack David Blau and Greg Dortch, you're looking at 7,000 DraftKings salary for 2 players who have 15 plus fantasy point upside each. So I really like that stack as well. So again, I like Greg Dortch as a sleeper pick here versus the Atlanta Falcons. Another sleeper pick that I like is Romeo Doubs from the Green Bay Packers playing the Minnesota Vikings, who have the second worst defense overall, give up the 3rd most fantasy points to opposing wide receivers. Romeo Doubs has averaged 8.9 fantasy points per game on the season, getting an average of 5.6 pass targets per game. He's only going to be about 2% owned, projected at 9 fantasy points here this week. He's 4,700 DraftKings salary, 1,200 more on FanDuel. Vegas thinks there's going to be 48 points scored in this game, with the Packers favored by 3. And the Packers are still in the playoff hunt. So I think Romeo Doubs is going to get quite a bit of action here from Aaron Rodgers. He scored 7 and 11 fantasy points in his last 2 games off of 6 and 5 pass targets. It's a great matchup. So I like Romeo Doubs here versus the Minnesota Vikings. Another sleeper pick that I like is Jahan Dotson from the Washington Commanders playing the Cleveland Browns, who have a middle-of-the-pack defense overall. They've been pretty good versus opposing wide receivers, but Jahan Dotson has averaged 11.7 fantasy points per game on the season, getting an average of 5 pass targets per game, been on the field for 78% of the snaps, projected at 11.1 fantasy points here this week. He's 4,600 DraftKings salary, 1,500 more on FanDuel. Vegas thinks there's going to be 40.5 points scored in this game, with the Commanders favored by 2. So Jahan Dotson has scored 20, 24, and 16 fantasy points in the last 3 games off of 9, 6, and 9 pass targets. So I like Jahan Dotson as a sleeper pick here versus the Cleveland Browns. Okay, moving on to the tight end position. My sleeper pick, deep sleeper pick at the tight end position is Trey McBride from the Arizona Cardinals playing the Atlanta Falcons, who have the 5th worst defense overall, give up the 3rd most fantasy points to opposing tight ends. Trey McBride has scored 5, 10, and 6 fantasy points in the last 3 games off of 4, 5, and 6 pass targets. He's only going to be about 1% owned. He's projected at 6.5 fantasy points here this week. He's 3,300 DraftKings salary, 1,500 more on FanDuel. We know Vegas thinks there's going to be 40.5 points scored in this game, with the Cardinals trailing by 6. So going back to David Blau from the Arizona Cardinals, he's got a couple of options here that are super low salary with fantastic matchups. So I just think there's an opportunity for an Arizona Cardinals stack. And if David Blau can throw a couple of touchdowns here, I think you're going to be looking pretty good. Definitely high risk, but high reward. I'm for sure going to run some Arizona Cardinals stacks. Just save so much salary with these picks. You can stack the rest of your lineup with studs. And these guys will have all the opportunity in the world without DeAndre Hopkins. So I like Trey McBride as a sleeper pick here versus the Atlanta Falcons.
If you want to try all these daily fantasy tools for yourself, click the link in the description below this video or just go to draftdashboard.com. You can use our DFS lineup optimizer to build quality lineups using our picks and your own custom player pool. Click the link in the description below this video and try all these daily fantasy tools right now. Thanks so much for watching. Oh, and don't forget to subscribe to this channel and hit that bell icon so you can get instant updates whenever we post a new video. Thank you so much for watching, everyone. If you enjoyed this video, please smiggity smash that like button and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. Oh, and please comment below with your favorite player for this NFL slate. I love to hear what you guys have to think. Thanks again and good luck.